Hi, I'm Elizabeth Enright, and I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. At 35, I got breast cancer, which really shocked me. And as a result of the breast cancer, I now had a pre-existing condition, who knew, which meant that I was no longer eligible for health care coverage, even though I had an employer. My cancer things were not going to be covered going forward. So that meant for 30 years, I didn't have health care coverage. And I worked 3 jobs. My goal in life was to make certain that I would never be a burden to anyone and I had sufficient money to be able to pay should cancer return. Now, I was shocked at 65. Who thought 30 years later cancer would return? And so when I was 65, I exhausted the savings that I had for my medical bills and still had $59,000 in debt. And what happened is I lost my full-time job. All my life been so careful. So I found that I had to declare bankruptcy. I declared bankruptcy, and then from that point on decided that no one else should ever have to endure these feelings of hopelessness and helplessness combined with having an illness. Fast forward to age 72, and I received, shockingly, a diagnosis of cancer for the 3rd time. At 72, I'm blessed to say that I now had Social Security. Thank you very much for Medicare. It was a blessing. No one in our country should be forced to have to declare bankruptcy to pay medical bills. No one. To me, that is heartbreaking. And so to me, healthcare is something that I speak up for on behalf of everyone.
I am Elena Hung, a mom to an amazing daughter with complex medical needs and disabilities. And I believe that healthcare is a human right. I am outraged that instead of focusing on COVID relief during a pandemic, Senate Republicans have rushed to confirm a Supreme Court justice who will take away healthcare from millions of Americans. This has been an illegitimate process from the very beginning, following years of unsuccessful efforts to overturn the Affordable Care Act through legislation. We have learned a lot about Judge Barrett during this sham hearing, as she refused to answer over 100 questions over 2 days. She made it clear that she will not stand up for core American values. She refused to stand up for the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, a law that provides life-saving protections to millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions. Judge Barrett refused time and again to confirm that the ACA was constitutional. She would not commit to recusing herself from the case she will hear shortly after the election, if confirmed, on which she's been given clear marching orders from this president. She would not distance herself from her previous comments criticizing the Supreme Court's decisions that upheld the Affordable Care Act. And it is not just the Affordable Care Act. Judge Barrett also refused to say that Medicare was clearly constitutional. And she refused to say that Social Security was clearly constitutional. This is troubling to all of us who rely on healthcare to survive and thrive. Judge Barrett went into the sham process with views that are deeply out of step with Americans. And for our children and their future, we must do everything we can to keep Judge Barrett off the Supreme Court.
My name is Kimberly Dickens, and I'm from Pine Tops, North Carolina, and I currently live in Cary, North Carolina. I was unemployed, which means that my insurance coverage ended. So I signed up for ACA. I do remember receiving a phone call from my OBGYN office, and they was telling me that I need to get a mammogram because I was 40 at that time. Results came back on July 28, 2014, that I had stage 0, grade 2 breast cancer. I had the mastectomy September the 8th, 2014. And my life really changed from there, because 6 months later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in the right breast. I did have ACA when I first was diagnosed the first time in the left breast. And that bill came to $60,000. But when I got the bill from the insurance company. At that time, I was only responsible for $59.95. And I was blown away that that much coverage was covered under ACA. But I had a pre-existing condition before I signed up for ACA. Then I got diagnosed with cancer as soon as I got the policy. To hear that this is in jeopardy of being taken away because, the present administration does not like it at all, but don't have a plan to replace it, it bothers me. That's when I have to share my story and let people know that it's necessary.
Hi, I'm Ben Jealous, president of People for the American Way. I've known many of you since the days when I was president of the NAACP. I'm here today to say that every senator should vote no on Amy Coney Barrett. She has made it clear that she is a threat to our healthcare and our democracy. She said that the ACA is essentially in her crosshairs. And she refused to say that Medicare was constitutional or even that Social Security was constitutional. And she went on to say that she's not sure that voter intimidation is unconstitutional. She's not sure that the President of the United States does not have the unilateral power to delay our elections. And she refused to say that the President of the United States should commit to a peaceful transfer of power. And we're clear at People For, and we're clearly asking every senator to vote no on Amy Coney Barrett for the sake of the health care of the American people and the sake of American democracy. The harm she will do to our democracy and the health care of our people will be irreparable and deep. So please, thank you to everyone who's standing up for health care. Thank you to everyone who's working to defend our democracy. And thank you in advance for voting no on Amy Coney Barrett.
My name is Angela Bergmann, and I'm from Akron, Ohio. So my husband and I have been married for about 12 years. We very quickly found out that we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. It took us a number of years to actually save up the money to be able to afford IVF because our healthcare didn't actually cover it. And then once we could afford it, we had repeat failures. In fact, having access to fertility treatment actually made me find out that I was at risk for ovarian cancer. Being able to seek fertility treatment helped me find that out. I had an ectopic pregnancy along the way that resulted in surgery to remove one of my fallopian tubes as well as the pregnancy to save my life. I had a 6th IVF transfer this past January before COVID happened, which was finally successful. And I gave birth to a daughter on September 3rd. So there's numerous ways that it would impact me. There's just the pre-existing condition situation, the cancer risk that I have, there's the IVF, there's the pregnancy. Pregnancy and birth is considered a pre-existing condition. So if I were to get pregnant again, likelihood is if the ACA was overturned, I wouldn't have maternity coverage. The level of impact it would have on my life is significant. My daughter came a little bit early, so she spent 17 days in the NICU. So she has pre-existing conditions. So she could be denied health coverage if the ACA was overturned. So my infant daughter, who is 6 weeks old, would not have access to health coverage because of something that occurred to her when she was born. And that thought terrifies me. At the end of the day, people just want to have a family. I would literally be dead if some of these people had their way with my ectopic pregnancy. My ectopic pregnancy was already traumatizing enough as it was because I was in the middle of fertility treatments. I desperately wanted that baby. My life was at risk. And to have legislators in my state be like, well, they should have put it back in your uterus. You should have risked infection to give me false hope for a pregnancy that I really wanted. It's just scary.
Hi, I'm Alexis McGill Johnson, president of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Right now, our rights, our health, and our futures are on the line. Yet President Trump and Senate Republicans, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, are fast-tracking a Supreme Court nominee in less than 40 days, when they've gone more than 200 days without passing comprehensive COVID-19 relief. It's a disgrace to our democracy and a disgrace to the will of the people. Any nomination would be inappropriate at this time. But Judge Barrett's record, her writings, and her views show us that she poses a direct threat to our reproductive health and rights, and to the many healthcare gains that we've made under the Affordable Care Act. During her hearing, she wouldn't even say that Griswold versus Connecticut, the landmark decision that established the right to birth control, was correctly decided. She also said that unlike other cases, Roe v. Wade, which has been law for more than 45 years, is not super precedent because, according to Barrett, it's not well settled. And before becoming a judge, she signed onto a newspaper ad calling the legacy of Roe v. Wade barbaric. And in the short time she's been on the federal bench, she has continued to show her hostility to abortion rights. 77% of Americans support access to safe and legal abortion. Nearly 9 in 10 women will use birth control in their lifetimes. Barrett is dangerously out of touch with the American people. With 17 cases one step away from the Supreme Court that could determine access to abortion, it's not an exaggeration to say that our rights, our health, and our futures are at stake. This is more than Justice Ginsburg's seat. It is the people's seat. Planned Parenthood Action Fund is calling on the Senate to immediately stop this illegitimate, rushed confirmation process. No confirmation until inauguration.
My name is Elizabeth Alexander. I'm currently living in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I am a member of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma and the Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. So growing up, we didn't always have the opportunity to have reliable health insurance. And my mom did the best that she could with the jobs that she had, but a lot of the time we couldn't get coverage. And so we relied on either local tribal clinics or going to our urban Indian organizations. So we relied on those a lot because they relieved the financial burden of having to pay for healthcare and getting our medications. Growing up, I know I'm not the only one who relies on the Affordable Care Act for primary health. It's really important because not everyone is able to get the kind of health insurance that covers everything for them to not have to worry about anything. I know it's difficult to have to worry about that and to worry about having to go to the hospital and thinking, are you going to be able to pay for it or not? When we get sick, we don't want to go to the emergency room anywhere other than a local Indian clinic or our urban Indian organization because we won't be able to pay for it. So a lot of the times we just get sick, we just deal with it and hope that we don't have to go to the hospital. They provide a lot of resources and care for a lot of different people. And I know the people, because they're also Native American, and so it's more comfortable to be able to go to places like that. And hopefully, we can keep it because a lot of my family relies on it. The ACA is important because it's a lifeline for a lot of families on and off reservations.
Hi, I'm Matt Traldi, Indivisible's acting co-executive director. Indivisible is a national movement of millions of activists and thousands of local groups in every state. Together, we're fighting for real democracy, of, by, and for the people. That means we're fighting against the sham process to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Republicans are trying to rush through this confirmation process while millions of Americans have already voted in the election. And that shows just how broken our democracy is and how willing the right wing is to do anything to entrench their power. Judge Barrett herself doesn't seem to believe in our democracy. She dodged over 100 questions in 2 days of hearings. She refused to say whether or not voter intimidation is illegal. She declined to recuse herself from cases involving the 2020 election, even though Trump, who has paraded anti-democratic rhetoric about the election, has been clearly committed to seating her before any cases on the election are heard. She even refused to say whether or not the president can unilaterally delay the election. Judge Barrett also represents the fifth vote to gut the Affordable Care Act. This is a huge deal because just 1 week after the election, the Supreme Court is going to hear another ridiculous case challenging the constitutionality of the ACA. Barrett refused to recuse herself from that case. She refused to comment on whether the ACA is constitutional. And she pretended that she didn't know that President Trump has committed to only appointing anti-ACA judges to the Supreme Court. Judge Barrett's ready to strike down the ACA in the middle of a pandemic, and Senate Republicans are more focused on their extreme agenda of ripping away healthcare from millions of Americans than they are at providing people with COVID relief. And that's just scratching the surface. Judge Barrett also refused to commit to whether Medicare and Social Security were constitutional. Americans are suspicious of Judge Barrett, and they want to see the next president appoint the next Supreme Court justice. Over the course of this confirmation process, Judge Barrett has proved that she deserves that suspicion, that she is not going to stand up for our rights or our democracy. Amy Coney Barrett has no business being on the Supreme Court. She has no business replacing our champion, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
My name is Teresa Marez. I'm the mother of 2 children, one of which has autism. I'm also a recently retired hairstylist. In 2011, my children and I were in a rollover car accident, and thankfully my children healed okay, but I sustained spinal injuries that will be with me for the rest of my life. As a hairstylist, I worked for mostly small and locally owned salons that are unable to provide insurance and other benefits to their employees. I've undergone tests to determine if I might also have rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. I'm being sent to a specialist, including a rheumatologist and a neurosurgeon, to try to find relief for the chronic pain that has pushed me out of my career. After many years of different therapies and treatments, I recently re-injured my cervical spine. I'm faced with the possibility of needing to have surgery, but as a single mom who is currently not working, I don't know how I'd be able to afford it. I really need for Marketplace to stay open, for ACA to be accessible for me. It's very important to me, and it's very important for my family.
With this nomination, we are watching the erosion of democracy in real time. After breaking the rules of his own committee, Lindsey Graham advanced a nominee who stridently refused to answer the most basic questions. And McConnell scheduled a vote for Monday, near warp speed for a lifetime seat on the Supreme Court. During her hearing, Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't defend the right to birth control, the right to an abortion, the right to marry and be with the person you love, or the right to stay with your family as you seek a new life in a new country. After months of daily protests for racial equality, Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't acknowledge that systemic racism exists or that people are experiencing voter discrimination all over this country. In the middle of a pandemic, Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't say if Medicare was constitutional or if millions of people deserve to keep the health care they've secured thanks to the Affordable Care Act. And with millions of votes already cast, Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't say if the president must commit to a peaceful transfer of power, and she left open the possibility that the president might be above the law. Barrett's silence spoke volumes, because if she actually came clean and said what she thinks, there'd be no way she would get confirmed. Her record also speaks volumes, making it clear she will overturn Roe versus Wade, overturn the Affordable Care Act, and hand Trump a contested election. Their effort spoke volumes. She and Senate Republicans went to extraordinary lengths to hide what she will do. Amy Coney Barrett is an ultra-conservative who will erode our rights, protections, and liberties. She will cause irreparable harm to the American people. Alliance for Justice will be on the front lines to restore fairness and independence to our judiciary. The fight is not over.
My name is Crystal Wilson, and I'm from Golden, Colorado. So when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and little did I know how much that would impact my future and my ability to have children of my own. I met my now husband years later, Tyler, very shortly after. He was serving with the 173rd Airborne Brigade over in Afghanistan, and on May 3rd, 2005, his unit was called up for a rescue mission. They were flown in on helicopters. Immediately upon landing, they started receiving enemy fire, and what followed was a really long and intense battle with Taliban forces. Unfortunately, on that day, my husband Tyler was shot 4 times, and the first bullet instantly paralyzed him. The second left him fighting for his life. And thankfully, due to some incredibly brave men and some really skilled doctors, he made it through that day. We have rallied through all of it, and we have an incredible marriage. Because of Tyler's spinal cord injury, we were left with IVF being the only option for us to try for a biological child. And in December of 2015, when we started on our family building journey, we quickly found out that there was no coverage through the VA. That's actually what got us involved in advocating for fertility coverage. And thankfully, to the 2016 legislature, we were able to successfully get an amendment passed that would allow combat and service-connected infertility to be covered. Our oldest son is actually 3.5 now, and he is a full-blown toddler and the most amazing little boy ever. We now have a 14-month-old little boy as well, who also keeps us on our toes, just started walking and moving and grooving. So because of this coverage, because of the incredible doctors and nurses and clinicians and the amazing healthcare that we have available to us, we have 2 beautiful children, and we were able to pursue our dreams. And the reality is, it's healthcare. But the reality is, infertility affects 1 in 8 people in the US. Limiting their access to safe and effective healthcare is going to do nothing except for set us back as a country. It is going to do nothing except for risk mothers' lives, risk babies' lives. All we're looking for with regards to infertility care, infertility treatment, is to create healthy moms and healthy babies.
I'm Vanita Gupta, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a coalition of more than 220 national organizations working to build an America as good as its ideals. Ideals that Justice Ginsburg reached for in her incredible life, and what a legacy she leaves us. We are clear who we are fighting for: you, your rights, and your future. It is reckless, it's shameful, and it is devastating to our communities and to our democracy that the Senate Republicans are rushing through this Supreme Court nomination. To put it plainly, they are failing us. They are failing families and communities who are struggling in this pandemic. They are failing to answer calls for racial justice. And they are failing their constituents. Already, more than 35 million people have voted in this election, casting ballots for the president and senators who they say they want to make this monumental decision. Yet they are speeding through a nominee whose record and whose hearing testimony shows that she will be a decisive vote in cementing their agenda to roll back decades of progress and take over the Supreme Court. But make no mistake, we know what's at stake: access to healthcare, reproductive rights and freedom, voting rights, LGBTQ equality, immigrant justice, disability rights, and so much more. Amy Coney Barrett is a threat to our civil and human rights. That is why we are fighting for our Supreme Court, one that works for all of us, one that upholds our highest values. And we will fight today, tomorrow, and every day until we have achieved equal justice under law.
I'm Dana Jahn. I'm from Manila, Iowa. I contracted COVID 1st of May. I work at a Smithfield plant in Denison, Iowa. Smithfield sent all the employees 60 and over home because we were considered high risk. I left work on a Thursday. On Sunday, I started feeling, bad, like somebody beat me up. Monday, I had 105 fever. Just run down, tired. Mostly it was a high fever. I was one of the lucky ones. My breathing was okay, and just high fever and body aches. That lasted about 10 days. I've also had a quadruple bypass surgery on top of my COVID. So, yeah, I have a lot of pre-existing conditions, and it's kind of scary that, I could lose that. To me, it's kind of a common sense deal. Being from the Midwest, If a storm rolls in and tornado sirens start going off, that's not a good time to call up and cancel your homeowner's insurance. Now we got a pandemic rolling through the country. Common sense says bad time to mess with people's insurance. I think it's common sense. I just hope our leaders can find some of that. It's a pandemic's it's not the time to mess with anybody's insurance, especially if they don't have a better plan in mind.
Instead of tackling the pandemic head on by protecting our jobs and saving our lives, the Republicans in the Senate are rushing to confirm a Supreme Court justice who wants to take away health care from millions of Americans. We need a Supreme Court justice who believes that everyone is equal, no matter what our race, our ethnicity, or gender. Barrett dodged question after question. She tried to hide her record on the Affordable Care Act. She tried to not acknowledge the reality of climate change. She wouldn't answer simple questions on voting rights, systemic racism, on whether children should be separated from their parents. We will not go backwards. This process has been a sham from the very beginning. More than 26 million people have already voted in this election, and that number is growing every day. We must let the people decide who should serve this lifetime appointment. Our work is essential. Our vote is essential. We know that the Republicans in the Senate have been rigging the courts in the favor of the rich and powerful for a very long time, and we're doing everything in our power to stop it.
Hi, my name is Aron. I live in South Georgia near Savannah. I'm from Northern Michigan. As a youth, I received much of my medical care through the Indian Health Service. When the Affordable Care Act was first enacted, I was an urban college student in Detroit with no health coverage. It was very affordable and it allowed me to have peace of mind that I was covered, including my pre-existing condition. I've recently lost my health coverage benefits with my job as I was taken down to part-time. And now I am enrolling back with the Affordable Care Act to get health coverage, which starts next month. If the Affordable Care Act is removed, I will no longer have health coverage and potentially will have more pre-existing conditions than before that may limit my coverage in the future. It's important to me and for all Americans to have health coverage. And if the Affordable Care Act is taken away, many people like me won't have health coverage.
I'm Fatima Goss Graves, President and CEO at the National Women's Law Center. We are less than 2 weeks from an election and in a truly unprecedented position. Republicans have raced forward with a hearing that did nothing to calm the public's fears that Amy Coney Barrett would undermine our reproductive rights and freedom. Nearly every public statement that she has made on abortion has been against our constitutional right to access it. And we already knew that Barrett held extreme views on birth control and on when life begins. She had a high bar coming into the hearing, and she failed. In her hearing, she didn't take back her statements that Roe versus Wade is barbaric. She didn't repudiate her belief that life begins at fertilization, a view that could be used to justify criminalizing birth control and in vitro fertilization. And when pressed about her legal views, she gave us non-answers and vague statements. She said less than Justice Thomas, less than Justice Kavanaugh, less than Justice Roberts. She refused to say whether even Griswold, the case that first recognized that the Constitution protects the right to birth control, was rightly decided. A new line about what judges will actually tell the public about their views has been drawn. And the impact of her non-answers on this and on other issues is enormous, not just for birth control, for abortion, for personal relationships, for immigration, and for climate change, and for criminal justice, for survivors, for our ability to have a fair and free election. The fact that we even are discussing this while people are voting makes this whole process unconscionable. We deserve a justice who will fight for the civil rights and freedom of all women and girls and of all of us.
Hi, my name is Mary Cameron. I'm from Chandler, Arizona, and in April of this year, I had coronavirus. For the last 11 years, I've lived in the Bay Area in California, and I actually recently moved back to Phoenix 2 weeks ago to be closer to family. When it was at its worst, my heart wasn't just beating rapidly, it was pounding. The Affordable Care Act means that I won't be punished by my insurance company for contracting the coronavirus, for getting COVID-19. I won't be punished by my insurance company for having migraines. I won't get kicked off right before I need to see a specialist to see if this is anything that could ever possibly be fixed. And I'm speaking out now because I am worried no one else will do it for me. This Supreme Court nomination is terrifying, really. The first thing I thought when I heard the news was that I'm gonna have to pay everything out of pocket. And that is already scary. I don't have a plan B if I lose my job. I don't have a plan B if I lose my healthcare. I don't have a plan B if my insurer kicks me off of my insurance. If my representatives don't know that, if representatives in the Senate don't know that, then they're not going to protect me. They're not going to protect the millions like me who have had COVID-19 and may or may not have permanent damage from it. There's so much we don't know about this virus that the one thing we can't do, I can't do, is lose access to healthcare.
Hello, my name is Alphonso David, and I am the president of the Human Rights Campaign, the largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights organization in the world. Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Judge Amy Coney Barrett has shown us clearly who she is and what she will do if confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. She has, throughout her career, aligned herself with the far-right anti-equality fringes of the legal community. She defended the dissenters in the Supreme Court's landmark marriage equality case, Obergefell versus Hodges. She shares the same judicial philosophy as Justice Scalia, who ruled the wrong way on virtually every major Supreme Court case dealing with issues of LGBTQ equality. And during this confirmation process, we have seen once again how Amy Coney Barrett would endanger LGBTQ equality if confirmed. She refused to say whether the landmark case Lawrence versus Texas was correctly decided. She sidestepped questions about preserving LGBTQ non-discrimination protections. And she refused to denounce prior writings and statements that, if implemented through the court, would result in a systematic regression of LGBTQ rights. Amy Coney Barrett has worked alongside and has been a paid speaker for the Alliance Defending Freedom, a group that has called and advocated for the sterilization of transgender people and the criminalization of same-sex relationships. And if she's confirmed, this country would be one step closer to a Supreme Court bent on devaluing the lives of LGBTQ people. We remember very clearly what life was like before we could go to work without fear of being fired, before our relationships were decriminalized, before same-sex couples could legally marry nationwide. And we fear, with good reason, a far-right Supreme Court could undermine the rights of marginalized communities and the LGBTQ community for decades. We have seen who Amy Coney Barrett is, and by rushing through this extremist nominee in the middle of a pandemic while denying aid to millions of people, we have seen once again how morally bankrupt Trump, Pence, and McConnell truly are. Our senators must vote no, and if they do not, we will hold them accountable.
My name is Laura Packard, and I'm a small business owner here in Denver. 3 years ago, I walked into a doctor's office with a nagging cough and walked out with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. That should have been the hard part, going through 6 months of chemotherapy and a month of radiation. All that summer, as I went through more and more treatments, Republicans in the Senate tried again and again to repeal the ACA, which millions of us depend on. Now I'm uninsurable without the Affordable Care Act. 135 million Americans have some kind of pre-existing condition. If we go back to the days of annual and lifetime limits and insurance companies picking and choosing which treatments to cover and how much to charge somebody based on how healthy they think we are all at risk. Anyone can become sick or injured at any time. And Republicans in the Senate are working to ram through a judge to take away our health care instead of spending the time on more COVID relief, which we desperately need. I survived cancer, but it's hard for so many of us to survive what this administration is doing every day to our health care. I'm in remission right now from my stage 4 cancer, but if my cancer comes back and I don't have insurance, I will be bankrupt or dead. My life is at stake. Our lives are at stake.